Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you. How's it going? How are you? You make it through the week all right? Yeah, of course you did. Look at you. You're like Rocky at the top of the stairs, not the first try around where he's sweating and screaming and potentially an alcoholic. No, you're final form Rocky. I'm final form Rocky, and I'm happy to have you here. We got a great show for you today. It is about something that I get asked a lot about, which is, who is Hasan Piker? Seriously, like, this is a question I just get so often, especially over the last few weeks. And usually when they ask it to me, people ask it to me, I just go, some left guy on the internet, and that's it. But as it's become more and more of a controversy in terms of associating with him, seemingly, apparently, based off of all I hear about it on the news, on Fox, on Wall Street Journal, Rolling Stones, Jake Tapper, Fetterman, all these people won't stop talking about Hasan and the candidates that campaign with him / he campaigns with, that I figure it'd be worth just giving a very, very quick kind of summary of who he is, and more importantly, why all of a sudden he's become the new litmus test of this 2026 midterms, specifically for progressive candidates this cycle. And it's funny, when I thought about doing this episode, I was just kind of like, meh. And the reason why I was kind of like, wasn't because it's not interesting, but because it's a little weird, right? I mean, him and I are a fairly similar age. We operate in a similar space. Obviously, him significantly more successfully in this way. His audience is absolutely massive, hence why he's causing all this commotion. And I'm almost certainly going to meet him at one point in my life. I'm sure of it. So if this episode were ever to do really well and he listens to it, it'll be a little odd. But I figure it's worth it because, one, there's so much misinformation going out about these people, especially anyone in media and especially anyone who seemingly has any influence on the left. But also, I want people to be able to make a judgment for themselves, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat what I think about him. I mean, the TLDR of what I think, it seems like an interesting dude. He's definitely further left than me in some ways. Some ways he's not. He said some crazy ass shit in the past. I mean, I would never say some of the stuff he says. That's how I feel. Do I think people should have to be ashamed for campaigning with him, or he hasn't done any good for the left-wing movement, the progressive movement? No, I think he's done a lot of good stuff for them. So it's complicated, and I think it's dramatically overstated, like these comments he said. But we'll talk about it later. And again, it's not that I'm saying I agree with any of them or I would say any of them, but that isn't really the question of this episode. The question of this episode isn't, what do I think about Hasan Piker? The question is, why the hell do Senate nominees have to say what they think about Hasan Piker? And why do they have to say they stand by every freaking thing he said throughout his 8 years of streaming 24/7? And that's what we'll talk about. And I'm really excited to have you. It's a really interesting topic. Before we get into it, make sure you rate, review, like, subscribe, all that stuff. You can reach us at media@thelonelyliberal.com. And without further ado, let's get to it. So, who is Hasan Piker? It's a good question, right? So effectively, he's a influencer on the left who has a strong internet following based off of his political commentary that's very, very leftist and progressive and, critical of Republicans and Democrats and stuff like that. He has a huge following on Twitch, which is where most of his content comes from. For those who don't know what Twitch is, it's a streaming service, mostly used for video games, but other things too. And he, like I said, has a very, very big following. He has 3 million Twitch followers and, tens of thousands of active viewers, ranked number 5 on Twitch in 2026. And this dude is streaming like crazy. How crazy, you ask? Well, in the last 30 days, he's streamed 187 hours. That's basically 7 hours a day, and that is a lot of time. And I want you to keep that number in your head as we talk about these things, because just think about how many things people say in 10 minutes, let alone hundreds of hours of transcripts and video clips of them being generated basically all the time. A lot of the times people call him like the Joe Rogan of the left, and it's just basically because he has a following of young men, and similar to Rogan, that's who he's been able to kind of bring towards the leftist movement. keep that in your brain, right? Where did he start? So 2018, he was at the Young Turks, which is actually his uncle is the main dude, Cenk. If you think about the Young Turks, the main dude, that's his uncle. Basically, he left once, I think 2020. And since then, he's been doing this Twitch thing. And like I said, got an absolutely massive following. So very quickly, because, the whole point of this show is why people have to talk about their association with him. So I might as well just go through some of the things that he has stated. And again, I'm not trying to be defending or attacking. It's just saying it plainly what he said. The big one is about 9/11, right, where he says something along the lines of America deserved 9/11. Now, there is context of that, which he was basically trying to say, due to America's actions in the Middle East, you shouldn't be surprised that something like 9/11 happens. Obviously, that wasn't his word choice. Obviously, that is not a good thing to say. And yeah, he walked it back himself. But yeah, not kosher, not good. Maybe kosher is the wrong word, given what I'm about to say. Yeah, he also had a comment about Orthodox Jews dying in Lebanon. That's something he hasn't walked back. The thing he said on Pod Save America, or Pod Save America brought up, I'm sorry I didn't get that right, where effectively he was talking about lesser evils, and he was saying Hamas was a lesser evil than Israel. That's a big one, obviously, that got a lot of drama, right? Again, I'm not here to defend any of those things. That's not what we're talking about here. Think of this what you will. Like I said off the jump, not stuff I would say, but again, not the point of the episode. And not the point of the argument. And the reason why this argument is about to be made is all of these things that I just said, 2019, 2018, 2020, 6 years ago, right? So why is he now in the news? Why didn't this cause a bunch of hubbub when he said them, half a decade ago? And it's because this election cycle, right, in 2026, this midterm cycle, he's been campaigning with a lot of progressives, specifically progressives who are doing well versus incumbents. We're talking Abdul El-Sayed in Michigan. We're talking Avila Chevalier in New York, Kiros in Colorado. He had Francesca Hong on his stream. Obviously, she didn't win, but he did raise tens of thousands of dollars for her. So as his influence has clearly shown to at least have some impact on these midterms, of course, the Hasan Piker litmus test has started to bubble up. And I'm not joking when I say it's a litmus test. It is being talked about everywhere. We have people on Meet the Press asking Abdul if he'd keep campaigning with him after he learned about the 9/11 comment. Abdul said, of course it was a dumb statement. Of course I think Hasan himself would say that's a dumb statement. Of course, that is what he said. The same morning, Karl asked AOC on This Week whether Piker should have a role in the progressive movement. Chris Rabb was asked about this, saying that does association with him make a candidate less electable? The ultimate, kind of attack on this with Rabb, and it was with Sean Hannity in that clip that I was talking about on Sunday where Rabb called Sean Hannity Scott Hannity. Very, very funny. I highly recommend you watching it, where he's going through Hannity, that is this whole socialist DSA platform, and he's just going, this, abolish the Senate, give free healthcare, and doing that whole rigmarole. And at the very end, he goes, to top it all off, as any good socialist appears to be doing this election year, Rabb is campaigning with the new spiritual leader of the Democratic Party who said America deserved 9/11, Hasan Piker. And I think, not to put much weight on anything Sean Hannity says, but that phrase at the end, to top it all off. And I think that is interesting. It's like the capstone. It's the association of the capstone. It's not the evidence. Now, again, Chris Rabb won by 15 points and he's running unopposed. No one says Piker cost him the election because he won. Also, he's been on our show and no one brought it up because we're not as big as Piker and we haven't said anything controversial. Other people, Rogan got in trouble for this and he, of course, refused to apologize, but he went on the show. You have people like Fetterman, who's not technically a Republican, effectively one, said on Hannity, again, because he loves taking softball interviews on Hannity, I dare you, keep campaigning with someone like Hasan Piker. If I was a Republican, I would just dump $20 million for ads. Of course you would, because you don't think there's anything immoral about the campaign financing. Nevertheless, it just shows you the wide range of people who are bringing up this dude in terms of giving these people litmus tests. And why it's such a shitty test on top of just obviously, it's just, you can't pass it, right? Remember, the dude is doing 7 hours a day, unscripted, since 2018. Dude, the archive is effectively infinite. No one would survive vetting like that for that long. Not me, not anyone. If you recorded yourself for hundreds and hundreds of hours talking about politics for freaking 8 years, the odds of you saying something stupid is so high because a lot of the times when these dudes are streaming, it's like midnight, it's 4 a.m. And again, I'm not saying these are good things to say. I'm just saying, let's think about the context. The question isn't going to be, did he say something bad? No shit. It's, do we want to run this random thing he said this week? Because there's always something to pull because he said so many things. So when Jake Tapper's rattling off comments he's made, he's not breaking the news. He's just putting them together to make a point in that moment as a kind of like a straw man for an argument he's trying to make because he's mad about whatever. And I think that's important because we're watching these litmus tests now go through the 2026 midterm cycle. A couple of months ago, it was, does Israel have the right to exist? Then they added on, as a Jewish state, question mark. And then they added, as a state with equal rights. And now it's, do you agree with this clip from Hasan Piker from 2020? Look, note the escalation. Like, think about that. The old test at least asked you for a position. This one asks you to grade some other dude's comment from a decade ago. It's less falsifiable, not more. And the reason why I brought up Rogan earlier, like I said, he is compared to Rogan as the Rogan on the left. Think about what Joe Rogan has done over the last decade. I mean, dude, 1,300 doctors wrote an open letter on COVID. Neil Young pulled his entire catalog from Spotify because of them hosting Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan had to publicly apologize for saying the N-word tons of times. There's compilations on YouTube. You can find them. But when these attacks were happening, they actually weren't happening at Rogan. They were happening at Spotify. And it was never happening for the candidates he had on his show from both sides of the aisle. Bernie to Trump. No one ever said, Bernie Sanders, do you endorse every single comment Joe Rogan has made? Donald Trump, do you endorse every comment Joe Rogan has made? It's crazy. And specifically with Trump, who has been on Rogan a few times, including JD Vance, he endorsed Trump. So it's not, I know people will say, well, he's a comedian. Oh, he's a socialite. First of all, Hasan is just a political commentator. He's, I guess, talking about a more serious issue sometimes, but I would say the pandemic and politics is important as well. And also Rogan has been in the White House. So the idea that he isn't political is ridiculous. Specifically, when he's been to the White House, Trump signed an executive order directing $50 million to the FDA to fast-track psilocybin and ibogaine. Trump got the idea from Rogan. He said so. He said he got a text from Rogan about it, and he just signed the ESA. So that's quick. That's like one side of the aisle. And the other one is saying, please defend a guy who campaigns with you's comments from 8 years ago. Think about that. And think about what Trump has said when he talks about Rogan. He said something like, this is the direct quote, "We all respect Joe, and he's a little bit more liberal than I am. That's okay. I have a lot of friends that are a liberal." That's not something that Abdul was ever allowed to say, right? When Abdul gets asked, what do you think about Hasan? He never said, hey, you know, I respect Hasan. He's more liberal than I am. I don't agree with everything he said in the past. That's okay. We're in a party where we can disagree and find common ground. He's not allowed to say that, right? That's crazy and so hypocritical from a Republican Party or anyone, frankly, who's been whining about cancel culture the last decade. Because if you're mad about a tweet that someone said 10 years ago, then you shouldn't hold these people accountable for something crazy they said 10 years ago, too. And I want to hit that a little harder because I want to make sure it's pretty clear who never has to take any litmus tests. It's the Trump administration. And I know the conservatives out there are going, man, we know. I get it. But, dude, when NBC did their review of the DOJ releases of the Epstein file, They found that at least half a dozen top current administration officials with Epstein connections, Steve Bannon, Lutnick, all these guys not only were friends with Epstein, they were friends with him after the 2008 conviction. They visited the island after he was convicted for all this stuff. This isn't like RFK, who was friends with him in the 90s, which, again, I think should still mean something. He went bone hunting with Epstein. He's been on the planes. But that was at least in the 90s. And you can say, well, dude, I didn't know. These dudes, half the people, were friends with him after the freaking files came out and the allegations came out. And they're literally Secretary of Commerce. These are senior advisors. These are people in the cabinet. Think about that. Remember last year when the young Republican group chat leaked and they called black people all these racial slurs and things like that, musing about gas chambers and things like that? What did J.D. Vance say? He said, it's just a group chat. What are you going to do? I'm not going to join the party of pearl clutching. Yet these same people become snowflakes really, really quickly when it's a comment they don't like. Again, I'm not saying anyone should like. From 8 years ago from someone on the left, the double standard is ridiculous. It's simply ridiculous. And the last example of this, and the potentially the most egregious, is literally Donald Trump literally had a former al-Qaeda member in the White House to visit. Now, that man is now the president of Syria, so it wasn't like like crazy out of the blue. This dude has literally had, at one point in his life, a $10 million U.S. bounty on him. He was jailed at a prison for his involvement in terrorism. And what did Donald Trump say? He said, this is the quote, "He comes from a very tough place, and he's a tough guy. I like him." That's a quarter century after 9/11. We welcome a dude who literally used to be in al-Qaeda with full honors in the White House. And again, it's not weird to have adversaries in the White House. That happens in the presidency. But it is interesting that we extend the thought of meeting isn't endorsing when it comes to the president and a former jihadist. Yet we refuse to extend that same logic when it's a Senate candidate and a Twitch streamer. And like, I'm not saying there wasn't Republican resistance. I'm just saying like literally what happened though, right? So we're left with this kind of interesting kind of tension where on one hand, you have this dude, Hasan Piker, who has a huge audience, a lot of influence, and clearly has had a lot of positive impacts on the progressive movement, whether you like it or not. It's just true. But it's not so black and white because, for example, in the recent Wisconsin governor race, he was, like I said off the top, campaigning pretty hard for Francesca Hong, the progressive candidate who was running for governor. And when someone asked Hasan, do you think your involvement with Hong hurt her? He said, yeah. He said, yes. And he said it was probably partly my fault. And is that true? Is that wrong? I don't know. But did she have to defend his back catalog? Yep. But to be fair, she probably hurt herself more than he did. Let us remember that a lot of her old tweets emerged about canceling Thanksgiving, defunding the police. I mean, she only lost by 3,000 votes. That definitely could have affected her. I mean, should she have come on our show instead of going on CNN and talking about canceling Thanksgiving? Yes, but I digress. But again, this is the question. This is the loop. Media asks whether the association will hurt you. Coverage then makes it hurt. The results prove it hurts. And then you ask, well, does it hurt? And then this is what's happening. And why this isn't just Republicans. Why are we hearing this from the Tappers and the Fettermans of the world and CNN hosts and stuff like that? It's because he's threatening whoever controls candidate selection to some extent. Now, I'm not one to oversimplify it and say the thing that a lot of people say, oh, they're scared of him. They don't want him on because they're scared of him. Dude, he's on Fox News all the time. He's on these shows all the time. But they clearly know something's going on. He's clearly has some influence. And like I said, for a Democratic Party that has been whining about not having a way to connect with young men, I don't know if I'd attack one of your biggest spokesmen, even if you don't agree with everything he said. Remember, and I close on this, cancel culture happens on the right all of the time. And they're worried about Trump's cancellation more than anything in the world. really remember this, only 4 House Republicans signed the discharge petition on the Epstein files, while Trump and the leadership fought it for months. That's embarrassing. When Thomas Massie had his primary, the co-sponsor of the Epstein Transparency Act, he lost because Trump endorsed his challenger in the most expensive House primary in U.S. history that was eventually superseded by Abdul and Haley Stevens, but with more than $32 million in spending. Literally, because a dude wanted to release the Epstein files, he got canceled by the president. These guys, in the same cycle, the same apparently accountability is supposed to be had, the same force against a Democratic Senate candidate for a Twitch streamer's thoughts in 2019. It's just so weird. It's so hypocritical. And it doesn't change the fact that, of course, everyone is responsible for what they say, how you vote, and who you put in government. But I don't really think you're responsible for the complete works of everyone who's ever showed up at your rally. And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast, or if you're on YouTube, that would be great too. You can email us at media@thelonelyliberal.com. That is media@thelonelyliberal.com. Let me know what you think. This is interesting stuff, and I'm very curious. What do you have to say? We'll be back on Sunday with Rick to talk about the news. And until then, take it easy. I'll talk to you later. Bye.